Dear friends, welcome to this other edition of the Italian newscast from Dublin. Now, today the subject matter on discussion is the situation in the United States, the socio-political and economical situation in America. Because the recent political unrest in the United States is still a hot topic in the world media. My guests today are Pierluigi Scalia, an Italian scientist and researcher who has lived for years in the United States, and his colleague, American-born Stephen Williams, both attached to Philadelphia Temple University in a professorial capacity. The question I'd like to put to them is quite simple. What is happening in America? Are the recent events the beginning of a new era? Or putting it more simply, can America revert back to what it used to be in the eyes of the world? So, Pierluigi and Stephen, welcome to this meeting. To facilitate our interaction on the subject, allow me to give you my opinion as an Italian journalist, from a European perspective. It is believed that the social unrest in America, which was so cleverly exploited by the likes of Donald Trump, has been brewing for quite a long time through the polarization of a good section of the American population, which included the poor, the forgotten, the marginalized, instrumentalized by right-wing extremists, white supremacists, and the likes. To some extent, at least since the Bush fathers' administration, it is believed that too much attention and too much money have been spent on foreign policy military interventions while neglecting domestic social inequality issues. And this was a cocktail which was, to many observers, only waiting to explode. Am I right in saying what I'm saying?
Well, if you would like to, thank you for that introduction. I would actually, from an American's perspective, you are somewhat correct in thinking that this was actually between the pandemic and a lot of the social riots that we had in the United States this year. This was basically a perfect storm, as it were, that really exacerbated a lot of the problems, including inequalities, health inequalities, as well as social inequalities that actually had been brewing and had existed in this country for decades. As far as the pandemic goes, it really showed how bad our American health system has gotten as far as its inability to cope with stresses to the system, as well as inabilities to properly serve all peoples in the communities. From a social perspective, although it is not, in general, Americans are usually tolerant of people, and this is usually coming from somebody who lived in the Northeast section of the United States. People are, in general, tolerant of everyone else, but you will always feel a bit of tension between certain groups of people that has existed. And if you go out into more rural areas, it's a little bit more evident that is actually the case. Mm-hmm. This administration, the past administration, seems to really have brought these, it's almost like cook the pot, as it were. And it just seemed to explode right now. But with this new administration, the Biden administration, there's a lot of hope. And we feel that we're going on a correct path, both in regards to the pandemic, as well as a lot of the social problems that we have.
Well, we believe here in this part of the world that, in fact, Joe Biden would be a breath of fresh air compared to what you have been experiencing lately. You know,
That was far.
yeah, right.
That
What's
was
your
far.
thought, Pierluigi?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that the new administration has a huge amount of work to do, but it cannot be done just by the new president. I believe that all those Americans at all levels of society um, who have worked together as after any great calamity or depression in the United States, I mean, have to most probably do their work so that America can, find itself in a better place. I should say also that I mean, I agree totally with Stephen analysis in there as far as the pandemics. Has to be said, most probably the pandemic giant that is facing right now the country coast to coast has though been affected in the last few decades
Mm-hmm.
and especially in the past few years by also by other major problems like the climate change has shown, for example, in California, where practically the devastating effect of horrific winds and unstoppable fires have destroyed, for example, the famous wine country. I mean, I remember in the late 90s when I joined, when I was working in California. I lived there for about 15 years. I mean, the climate and the California climate was one of the only one worldwide that would resemble the Mediterranean climate, and of course, kind of just providing the kind of economy. And I
Mm-hmm.
have to say, for example, that type of damage that has caused California to really kind of just have to catch up for most probably the next 5 to 10 years only on that parts. I mean, when you sum that to all the problems that come from the pandemics and the disparity, the social disparity that Stephen was talking about, caused by the last 4 years of administration, most probably that really gives you this scenario. So overall, all I can say there is that say in this moment, this new administration has to really invest and work on those cultural, entrepreneurial, scientific, and health aspects that really kind of just are the major problems. And in doing so, say as a U.S. naturalized with person with European roots, I have to say I was impressed by Amanda Gorman, the young poet, and her words during the commencements, the new president, Biden commencements. I think that those words, those exact words, are the ones that America needs and go back to as far as an inspiration for the not only for the new generations, but also for whomever has gone through this period, and the many that are still suffering out there. So I believe that it's important to really kind of work on the cultural gap,
Yeah.
fact denial, environment that practically has
It'll be very interesting
overwhelmed
to
America
see.
in the last few years.
It'll be very interesting to see what will be Joe Biden's policy with regard to military interventions in other parts of the world, because we have a history, as I already said in my introduction, that since Bush father, there has been a lot of money spent, which could have been spent to with a good domestic policy to cure the emerging and also rampant social inequalities. Because I've seen some documentaries, for example, only recently, about even Los Angeles, where Los Angeles you have it's a paradise for 3/4 of the city, but then you have this poverty, dire poverty in some corners of the city, people sleeping on the footpath. You know, it's incredible that you would see something like that in the United States, which traditionally were portraying the image of the American dream, name it. You know, I personally, as an Italian, Sicilian, I was reared and educated in a very Americanized or American circles in Sicily, and therefore I've had for many years this idea of an ideal country, the lighthouse of democracy, number one, which now has been endangered with 4 years of a most controversial American presidency America had in any case. Would you agree?
Well, Americans in America has this a lot of times a tendency to slip into isolationism. That definitely was the last 4 years, but I do believe this new incoming administration really wants to extend their hand across the world. And as far as the inequalities, this is something that is a troubling situation in almost every American city. Every American city is having problems with homelessness, and it's not just the big cities; it's out in the rural countryside as well. And whether this is something due to an economic problem, or it's related to some of the opioid epidemics that are occurring in this country, because we do have a very big problem with that. It just seems to be that the sort of social safety net has been over the years, and this has been over the past 20, 30 years, since the time of President Reagan's administration, where it has been minimalized in this country, and so a lot of people have fallen through the cracks over that long period of time. There just has not been something there, or an emphasis, or a priority to fix these problems.
But you know, the part of the answer to what you're saying is, allow me as a pure socialist, is that the whole world has been suffering for decades of a malaise called capitalism. A rampant capitalism which has widened the gap between those who have and those who haven't in every country. I mean, I live in Ireland, and Ireland, believe me, with 5 million people, is one of the most capitalistic, thinking country at government level and every level. This is the problem. I mean, all this is happening against the background of a malaise which is affecting the world, really, And I mean, let's face it, I always like to mention a bit of a philosopher, Immanuel Kant, who said that democracy is the summation of the limitation of individual liberties for the common good. That is the problem. There is no more common good. Do you agree with me? Because, there is my good, my clique's good, my party's good, and that's it. And the big corporation's good.
I do.
Then, sorry.
You agree? I
agree?
totally agree with you on that. I actually do. I mean, as far as the considerations you were making as far as the foreign policy, say, of the United States, I mean, definitely, let me put it this way. I believe that since after the Second World War, the United States have been always having a foreign policy with some military, using the military as a strategic tool, as most probably China and Russia mainly. So the global stability will depend between those policies, let's call it this way.
Yeah.
However, I agree with you. This is seems totally antagonistic, or even out of really it makes a contrast with the actual major problems that the for example with the warming, with the global warming and all those major. In this moment, we've lost already so many species. I'm talking about animal species, and biodiversity is really going down the drain. And in front of these problems, everything that seems like strategic like that, I mean, it seems really kind of like going way off, really, where a country like the United States should be heading to. But I'm actually glad that President Biden has immediately taken this one as a priority. But I mean, trying to catch up on 4 years is not going to be easy. Let me put it this way. And it has to be a global consensus on something like that. This is really our priority. And let me put it this way, as a scientist, and I'm pretty sure Stephen agrees with me. Even the cause of this particular pandemics is in a way caused by, or in part caused by, the problem, the climate problem, because the major reasons why so many different species that normally historically have been living, say, distantly from each other. For example, bats are in the jungle, and some of those other animals that would transmit or being a vehicle for the mutations that are required in order to jump into the human species, I mean, are definitely something that is increasing constantly, because many of these natural habitats for these animals is decreasing, and they really get to meet these other species in ways that are totally unnatural for what it was known before. So I mean, as you see, I mean, there's a much complexity, though, that has to be embraced and studied using science and fact-based reasoning, and along with the policies that then have to take place worldwide. So I would say that, yeah, I agree with you. I have a socialistic or at least I would say democratic and social spirit, as many of us in the science field. But I believe that most probably the major problem is the global natural environment, which is degrading way too rapidly, and we risk seriously not to have a hurt that gives us the guarantees on which to build this kind of policies if we don't take actions very soon.
Just to move to a different subject, if you can be very, very brief, if you give me your verdict, individual verdict, with all these vaccines, are we going to see a light at the end of the tunnel?
Stephen, you go first.
Sure. Actually, there is some nice data this morning that is very positive on this, that as long as we can manufacture enough vaccines, the Novavax is looking, the data is looking very good. It's showing that it's actually effective against the UK variant. The South African variant, however, is a bit of a problem. But these companies are actually saying they're working on reformulating their vaccine to be effective against
all the variants.
Other variants. Yeah. So they're working very fast.
So that's
I think
very
they're
positive
coordinating
answer
now.
from you. Yes,
properly.
a very positive answer. Now, very briefly,
I would just simply confirm what Stephen has said. I will only add that, as a matter of fact, a variant that likely we need to watch better is also the Brazilian variant, in the fact that, as a matter of fact, is the one that seems to really behave differently from all those others. And so there's some work still to be done to make sure that eventually that variant is covered by the vaccines. But overall, as Steve was saying, and I can confirm, most of the vaccines that have been manufactured and they're actually, all going into the market now, and it's all about the number that they will be able to produce, to really get to the herd immunity. This actually worked for most of the variants in there. So I mean, we got to be positive about that.
Well, yeah, but thank you very much for being so positive. That's what I want to hear, and everybody wants to hear too. So at this point, all I have to do is just thank you very, very, very much for your participation in this meeting. And we meet again some sunny day, as the song says.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Concetto. It's been my pleasure.
Okay.
My pleasure.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.